Thank you so much. It is a great pleasure to come back to this house, to CEPS. I was asked to comment on competition tools. I was asked to make comments on competition tools in the context of the clean industrial deal, and now I'm, to a certain extent, invited to comment on this geopolitical context as the context where the clean industrial deal and the competition tools need to deliver to ensure a well-functioning and consistent European project. The short answer to the question is yes, of course. We can deliver. Next to that, I need to add, it will be challenging, but we are working to deliver. And next to that, yes, of course, it is going to be difficult times. It is being difficult times. But very honestly, I think that the most important thing to remind is that we have the capacities. Maybe we are experiencing a kind of shake because we did not expect this to happen, coming from such a relevant ally in the construction of an international order based in the rule of law, based in the cooperation, based in developing a governance system that can cope with the global challenges, but we need to remain in our basic settings and to respect and to underline the principles that drive our action. This is very important in any circumstance, but much more in these given circumstances. In fact, if we take into consideration the global arena, the international context, we realize that we need to develop an approach in the external action, in the external policies that takes into consideration the need to upgrade our capacities to build security for Europe. That includes all the discussions around defense, but not only defense. It happens that cables, undersea cables, break down. It happens that the raw materials that we need to develop our industrial functioning and the comfort in our households became hijacked by those that were supposed to supply the energy or the other relevant raw materials. It happens that climate change poses big challenges also in terms of security. It happens that these are things that also impact in our neighboring countries. So it is not that we can live in a bubble. The external action is particularly important. But it also happens that within our borders, the idea to build around a single market that functions, that counts on the increasing comfort of our people, our societies, is relevant, but it is always an ongoing process. How we can deepen the single market, how we can remain an open economy that attracts investment and at the same time provides the goods, the services that all Europeans demand, how it can be done in such a way that we bet on innovation, on retaining talent within our borders, very much in particular youth talent, how we can ensure that the level playing field is ensured not only within the European Union, but when taking into consideration that as an open economy, there may be investments coming from abroad. And this is where we have to update the way we frame our industrial policies. This is where we need to update the way we implement, we enforce our competition tools. This is where we identify that the clean driver is a great driver to bet on competitiveness for the time to come, to bet on a much more efficient use of the materials, to bet on a much more committed way to bet on innovation, and to ensure that we can count on our savings to afford the investments that are required. This is going, as I said, quite challenging. We try to bet on all these issues when delivering, when working, when drafting the Clean Industrial Deal as a way to propose to the European society a comprehensive understanding on which are the most relevant conditions to recover the confidence on our capacities to develop our economy in a framework that is fully consistent with the understanding of the challenges dealing with the global economy, the world context, and the climate change, or the scarcity of materials and the environmental concerns being expressed, but also being considered as physical limits that we cannot overcome. The good thing is that we have all the necessary strengths to navigate this complicated panorama, this complicated landscape. We have a very well-educated population, we have the infrastructures that can deliver, we have the capacities in industrial terms that can provide the success, and we count on something that the business community insists once and again as a very relevant reference, and that now we tend to forget, but it is very important. We may be boring, but we are predictable, stable, and we work paying attention to the rule of law. These are very basic comments, but in fact, these basic comments have become something so extraordinary in the context where we are navigating today. In that context is where I wanted to introduce the first questions that I was asked to comment, how the competition tools may help into this panorama, how we can build this clean industrial deal, because in fact, when thinking about the competition tools, we need to remind ourselves that since the very beginning, they were conceived as means to ensure that the level playing field, that the risk of accumulating power in a market that could create difficulties for consumers and for industrials was at the forefront of the definition and the development of the different tools. In the last years, we have updated many of these tools. We have given us some instruments that did not exist before, that try to accommodate the concerns being raised around the new kids in the block, the big digital players that are economic giants, but that may be accumulating such a big power that consumers, including industrial and business consumers, may be lacking alternatives, and that the new incomers could have difficulties to challenge, to contest the existing circumstances. So how we can provide a balanced approach between ensuring that innovation can take place and the protection of consumers in a context where there are these new players. This is why the Digital Markets Act, the Digital Service Act were so important, and now we have the first months of its implementation. We need to ensure that the enforcement takes place at the right level when compared with expectations and with the rules that were included in these regulations. We also understood that because we are an open economy, there was strong attractiveness to invest and to provide goods and services in Europe. And of course, if we are a market with more than 450 million consumers and foreign investors wanted to provide these goods and products in our market, we, institutions, need to be sure that the level playing field is ensured, that there are no any kind of distortion because of the eventual subsidies for these foreign investments taking place. So we adopted the Foreign Subsidies Regulation that has helped to address distortions caused by this type of subsidies that may challenge the capacity of our business to comply with the, in particular, environmental laws, but not only. And we came up with this notion of a clean industrial deal that provides a business plan to tackle the climate crisis, boost the competitiveness, ensure the economic resilience, and retain talent, thinking also about the tools that could help in this level playing field. We were looking into what it has been happening during the last years due to the economic impacts of the energy crisis after the invasion of Ukraine, after the COVID crisis. We gave ourselves some very interesting tools that could help in the use of the state aid to provide comfort to the society as such and the business community. And we thought that this was a good starting point to learn how this could be updated in the existing circumstances, in the current circumstances of today, how we could simplify and expedite support in case it is needed, how we could, in my case, comply with the mission that was introduced in my mission letter. I have a colleague that says that it used to be that when stepping in an official position, we needed to swear on a Bible, and now we need to swear on the Draghi's report. It is true being combined with the letters report, so thinking beyond the market, how we can think in terms of what the people may be asking for and how we can use the different tools. But coming back to this, yes, of course, stated rules and target interventions to the most distortive aid is important, but at the same time we know that the challenges are huge and that we may need to come up with a package that can simplify the use of these state aid capacities when needed, avoiding introducing distortions in the single market or facilitating a concentration of capacity in certain areas. So what we are about to do is to open a public participation period to a draft guidelines on a state aid that will be open along this week, to get the views of the different stakeholders on how we can update these guidelines dealing with the current challenges connected to the goals that are provided in the Clean Industrial Deal. That's not the only thing that we are doing. We thought that it was important to simplify and streamline and update the General Block Exemption Regulation, knowing that if we read the goals that we need to achieve and the tools that we have within hand, it was good to update this General Block Exception. And we invite to the member states to implement tax incentives such as accelerated depreciation periods to make clean investments more financially attractive to business and to crowding private investment. Because, of course, we need to combine public and private, but it would be very important that this happens in a quick, expedite manner, and at the same time to avoid overcompensations that may distort the competition, but also may prevent, as I said, that the next generation of challengers could contest the existing incumbents. Another thing connected to that, we know that the emergence of lead markets for clean technology are important, and this is why we are thinking on how to open door policy to business seeking guidance on how their cooperation projects align with the EU antitrust rules. Our conviction is that priority should be given to projects that advance the European Union's strategic goals, particularly innovation, decarbonization, and economic security in the European Union, including, of course, the genuinely green investments. There, again, these lead markets may be very important, and the role of the public procurement is crucial. So it is not only the price that should count, but we need to tackle this, paying attention to avoid things that could be challenged in the court or that could undermine the capacity to go in an expedite manner through this very important role of the public procurement that mobilizes more or less 20% of the GDP in each of our nations. People ask us to support circularity. If we want to ensure that the availability of raw materials is there, if we want to be much more effective and efficient in the use of these raw materials, of course we need to think in the external action, how we can develop partnerships with allies all over the world, how we can ensure a co-development approach that could pay back also in terms of this geopolitical context to ensure alliance in different geographies, but at the same time we need to be sure that we are as effective as possible in the use of the materials that are within hand in the European Union. This is why we will soon launch a fact-finding exercise on how European companies currently procure and recycle the most important raw materials they need to compete, so to find out if there is something else that we can do, because we need to promote choice and diversification of supply chains. And we thought that it may be important to count on projects of common European interest, but circularity may have other avenues than just the IPCIs. IPCIs should be certainly at the core of our decisions in the time to come. They have been proven to be quite successful in terms of how we have managed to combine the blending opportunities of public and private funding, but public at different layers of decision, and at the same time to promote innovation in the business community. So they will have a very important role to play. How we can identify potential new IPCIs during this year, how we can expedite the decisions and to simplify the processes, facilitating access to finance, but also working with the member states since a very first moment. The thing is that we will also need to work on another traditional competition tool that has become one of the elements being commented from different sectors as a relevant aspect to deal with what many call European champions. What we are talking about when talking about European champions, knowing, being aware that in many cases there are European champions that have the right size because they are middle and small companies that take a very relevant share of the international markets, irrespectively of their size, and to what extent where mergers take place may be creating conflicts in the single market because they prevent counting on different options for consumers. But in many other cases, when taking into consideration which is the relevant market, it may be a need to update the understanding on how they could be joining forces. This is an important and controversial issue. In fact, when asking the services of the competition units, they say 95% or more of the mergers proposals are clear with no problem. They take place with no problem. So we cannot say that it is because of the competition policies that this does not happen. The issue may be connected back to how we can deepen much better and much faster the construction of a single market, but at the same time it is also true that in many circumstances, in many cases, we need to take into consideration where is the market where they compete. So to what extent, if taking into consideration global world markets, there may be a need to update these merger guidelines to facilitate this happening and to ensure that both horizontal and non-horizontal mergers can be updated. For this, I think that we need to be quite cautious. It is important to hear from the different communities how each one positions dealing with these possibilities, so that we can support the European business in developing and deploying sustainable and industrial solutions, so that they can play a role in the relevant markets when these relevant markets go beyond the borders, so that they can take into consideration the fact that in many circumstances the intensity of the investments or the possibility to provide a much more speedy result in terms of the deploying of sustainable solutions may require some collaboration between the different companies, but at the same time, as I said, we need to protect green nascent competition from green killer acquisitions. And that is something that we have tried, that we have attempted by different means, and we are still needing to find out the way to be much more effective on this protection. This is going to be the core of our efforts in the months to come. This is going to be quite a crucial time to ensure that we can align the different tools within reach at the European Commission level, being combined with the tools that different member states and the different stakeholders can provide to ensure that the short answer to your question is a yes. Yes, we can. Thank you.